What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes, for the first time in what feels like forever, but apparently it's not that long ago, per the emails that Grant and I link each other to before we podcast. We are here to do they're not official NBA awards predictions just yet, but we're entering the stretch run, the final quarter of the season. We will have a podcast where we probably go through all of these a little bit quickly to update any of our picks, but we're 3/4 of the season in the books. We're going to take stock of all the major awards that are out there. Feel like a good time to do so. And it's coming out at a time where I feel like not a lot of people, they're talking about the betting odds of these awards, but they're not making their predictions just yet because we'll do that in a couple weeks. So our priors probably have not been impacted or influenced as much as they would have been, which is both exciting and terrifying at the same time. But before we get started, the question everyone's dying to know the answer to, because it's been so long in podcast time since they've heard it. Grant, how the heck are you doing?
It has been a long time. It's good to see you. It's good to hear you. It's just good to be back. It is really bizarre that my first thought was like, oh, we haven't talked in forever, or we haven't recorded in forever. It's been like 10 days.
February 18th, and we're recording this. So any numbers you hear, by the way, are locked in as of February 29th. So, and we'll get into the criteria very quick. But yeah, it wasn't as long as I thought. We talked a bunch, and Grant's text messages to me were, "Aren't you on vacation?" Every time I would message him something about the podcast or a short without fail.
Stop working. Enjoy yourself. Yeah, I was deliberately, I was like trying to be like real clipped and short, but like not in a mean way. It was like, because I want you to go enjoy your time.
I'm immune to your short text. I just send you waterfall messages anyway.
Yeah, you did not take the hint. You kept working. So, but you stayed on brand.
These awards, we both talked about this beforehand. There's an unnecessary amount of anxiety behind this research and our picks this year. I have no idea what it is, but it's just, I was super anxious and stressed out about it. I'll probably hate myself after this podcast, but it's supposed to be fun. We have the 65 game minimum in our back pocket. Apparently, though, as you mentioned before we recorded this, it applies to all defense, all NBA teams, which we will get to at a later date. I think that podcast will drop on Monday. It applies to all the awards except Sixth Man of the Year and all rookie teams. Is that correct?
And I think Rookie of the Year, I just had the tab open, but basically anything rookie, be prepared for us to just correct this if we double down on the research for when we do all rookie teams. But I think generally rookies and then six man are not affected by the 65 game rule, which even like, honestly, but not to dive too deep into it, but when I was looking at like all NBA teams and all defensive teams, I had the thought of like, thank God, like some of these guys get disqualified, so I don't have to think about them, because the list is already way too deep. But just having a handful be out of consideration just sort of simplified things for me, which is like a bummer that we, just can't consider guys that might come close. I think probably that's one of the worst things about the rule, is that like I would have thought about several players for some of those awards, but the 65 game rule was helpful in some ways. Less so for a lot of these individual awards. I don't know how you felt about it, but it didn't, other than like Embiid, obviously, there weren't a huge number of guys that I really would have considered as potential winners that were knocked out by the rule.
Yeah, it really feels like it might impact our rookie talk more than anything. Even the Sixth Man of the Year, when I was going about it, I was using the 65 game rule in my head, but going back, it's like, I will say, if it didn't apply to the most improved player discussion, there might be some spiciness there, but we'll get to that in time. Without fail, though, every time anyone does these podcasts, there are people that say the criteria is inconsistent or ambiguous. Their criteria is better. This is how they approach it. Grant and I are not going to sit here and rattle off a bunch of different numbers and metrics, a bunch of different specific plays, a bunch of different per game stat lines. We will talk about numbers and they will come up. But the idea, I promise you, we have watched games. We have looked at the numbers. We have read. We have listened to other podcasts about players and teams. We're bringing all of the information that we have or that we believe is pertinent at our disposal and trying to loop it together into just this aggregate discussion. And again, there will be numbers that come up. There will be specific things, but like we can't sit here and say, well, Jokic ranked in the top 5 of EPM and LeBron and Vorp and Schnorp and Slurps and whatever Zach Lowe calls them. And we're not going to say that for every guy. Like, it's just, you should know the numbers, all that you're working with. We have some data that's maybe not as publicly available for people that are behind paywalls, but like you've seen the same data we have. We're going to be very cognizant of not being we like going into the weeds. We're not going to be too dry or too complicated because that just doesn't translate well, whether it's video or podcast form. I will throw our ballots up on the screen for anyone watching, but I just want to make that clear because you say you have a different methodology that went into it. There's no scientific way to do this with me. I try to be consistent with my thought, and I do think the 65 game minimum actually helped us do this, but there's a bunch of different things that you value, and it comes up to how you interpret the award. And we won't start here, but like just looking at most valuable player is, does that mean best player on the best team? Does it mean the player who just literally can't be removed off his team? How do you handle a player who has a deeper supporting cast than others, or one who plays with starters more than bench players compared to the other candidates? There's so many balls in the air. At the end of the day, this is not that serious. It's supposed to be fun. I'm all for the debate, but I will not respond to any comments, any Discord messages, any Twitter mentions or DMs that are just pandering, patronizing, angry, whatever. I promise you, we might be wrong. I'll be wrong all the time. We're going to come back in a month, circle back. I promise I'll have edits here, but I just wanted to get that out of the way, as I promise you, we tried to take into as much as consideration as we deem possible and pertinent.
Yeah. I think that is how we need to start talking about the MVP conversation, because there are a couple, if you're ready to just jump into it.
We're going right to MVP. We're not even going to like try and get people to listen when we get to the spicy award.
I think you front load it. I think we go MVP.
This is peek behind the curtain. This is real time decision. I had it earmarked for last. All right, let's roll.
Yeah, no, look, we just, you don't podcast for 10 days or whatever with me, and I'm just going to wreck your whole spreadsheet. So you mentioned like just the concept of valuable. It is one of the 3 words in the MVP award. Nobody is sure what it means. And what's the doorway into this? How you conceive of the word valuable really affects the top 2 guys. Do we agree? Let's start here. My top 2.
Very quickly. Sorry.
Okay,
well, there might be some HMs that pop up, honorable mentions. I'm saying HMs, like I need to abbreviate it. There will be some honorable mentions that pop up on the board, but we're going to do it official ballot style and try not to spoil too much of our all NBA, all rookie, all defense discussion to come. There will be 5. We went 5 deep for MVP and then 3 deep, I think, everywhere else is like the official order, and every other names that appear, the order for the most part might not matter. So if you're watching that felt semi.
Yeah, they're like, for me, it's just like a worth a mention guy. Like, yeah, hey, everyone out there, like we didn't forget this guy. So my MVP is Jokic, but I think some of the best arguments against Jokic and for SGA, who is my number 2, have like really force you to reckon with like what valuable means, right? So we won't need to get into all the numbers, but like the one that really leapt out to me and made me, want to have this part of the conversation was like, Denver's 22 per 100 better with Jokic on than off, right? That's amazing. Well, a lot of that is because they're just terrible when he's not out there. SGA, the Thunder, like plus 11.7, I think. Again, we're not going to go nuts with numbers, but I'm just using this to illustrate this issue. The Thunder are like 11.7, plus 11.7 per 100 with SGA on. Denver is slightly worse than that. Last I had the numbers pulled up, like plus 10 with Jokic on. So it's like, do we gauge Jokic's value by how good his team is with him on the floor? Because if that's how we're doing it, just by this number, then SGA is more valuable. Or is Jokic more valuable because his team goes to shit when he's not in the game, right? Like, because that's valuable, right? Clearly he matters more to the success / failure of Denver than SGA does for the Thunder, because the Thunder are like almost break even without SGA on the floor. So it's just like, what's valuable to you? I don't know. Like that didn't decide it for me, but I was curious, like you probably came across those numbers too. And just like, how does that affect your view of like, what does valuable mean in that context? Like, do we care that because Jokic's supporting cast, I guess, is worse, or at least his replacement is worse? Like, does that make him more valuable, or should that even factor in?
So I think everything factors in. It's just a matter of how you weight it. And in this instance specifically, the Thunder might be able to tread water without Shea. They still struggle to score like hell when he is not on the court. And it's almost with whatever combinations you futz and fiddle with. Now, what is tough to reconcile, if you look at the percentage of Jokic's minutes that come with basically all starters, it's higher than a lot of the others that are going to be on this list, if not the highest, because that's the way that Michael Malone is going to run his substitutions. At the same time, like Jokic can prop up lineups without Jamal Murray. No problem. If you remove the two best players on the Nuggets, which when you get into the who's the third best player, let's just use Aaron Gordon is probably at least their third most important player. Like Jokic is still going to float those lineups on his own. And so like he's going to do so better a lot of the times than Shea will do when you mix and match there. So I got a little bit more into the weeds with that, but I also, just as you can't, I'm not going to penalize Shea for having, I don't know if it's a better supporting cast at the top, although like Jalen Williams is doing like wild stuff this year.
And Chet, also, like, wouldn't Chet be the second best player on Denver potentially? Like, I mean, Murray's really great.
No, like, Jamal Murray would still be the second best player, but like Chet can't. The whole thing is that I went with Jokic as well, and I went with Shea at number 2, and I also don't. By the way, I do not think that this is finished. Like this is an MVP award that could still be determined. Jokic to me impacts winning in more ways than Shea, where it's like, yes, Shea's going to have the edge as a scorer. Shea's going to have the edge as a defender because Shea's defense has been incredible this year. He's handled some tough assignments. They do insulate him when he's playing with J-Dub and Lou Dort at the same time. You also have Chet behind you. That helps. But when you look at Jokic, what he does as a passer and even the ways in which he's able to score at different levels and different types of touches, like where Shea can be a little, not too dependent, but he's dependent on that spacing and those drives, where Jokic can score in a number of different facets. To me, Shea's going to be able to get to the line a little bit more. A lot of that I think has to do with how much that Jokic is going to facilitate the offense from far away from the basket. I also, what turned it for me, and look, the on-off splits are part of that. Jokic's defense has been really good this year. Not to the point where I think Jokic belongs in the defensive player of the year discussion, but for so long, the conversation has been, look at what he does when he comes up to the level or how high he comes up. He still does that. This year, if you watch them, I talked about this with Ryan Blackburn, he's not a good rim protector. Don't get me wrong, but like he's doing better in drop. And then when we talked about that, Nekias Duncan actually came out with the numbers on what Jokic is doing in drop coverage. And it's like, I can't remember the specific number, but the Nuggets are allowing like under 0.95 points per possession when Jokic is in drop. That's really good. And so you take all of that into account with just like the rebounding, the triple doubles, the way he elevates the play of his teammates. Do you know why I think that Mike Malone is so married to playing his starters together as much as possible? Because he knows the team cannot function without Jokic, and also because he knows that Jokic elevates the play of so many of those guys around him. They found some combinations, Aaron Gordon at the 5 without Jokic, that can work, but nothing that can work for long periods of time. I don't know how to wait. Again, I think there's just other reasons to pick Jokic, as I outlined. If that was the deciding factor, I do find it difficult. I honestly don't know how to view it. And I think Nuggets fans might take exception if you're saying, well, who cares that he plays so much with the starters? It's like, hey, I'm not penalizing him here. I picked him for MVP, but it is part of the discussion, and it might be something that could drive Shea's case in the eyes of voters who, and the final thing I'll say, I'll just be very curious. These are our picks. They're not predictions. I think Jokic should win it. I do wonder if just Shea and the Thunder being so new, and then how people wait. I think with a lot of these awards, what gets baked into it is exceeding expectations. And Jokic we're numb to him. There's like no exceeding expectations sort of. I'm wondering if that plays into it at all, even though I don't think it should.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think too, like, just to simplify it, this is what, I mean, I think you can get there. If you're just looking at the numbers and you didn't watch a second of tape, it's like a coin flip, because SGA has Jokic in some of the advanced numbers. Although, like you mentioned, the Jokic's defense, I think to the extent that like it almost invalidates some of these numbers. Like Jokic is, I think, leading the league in defensive box plus minus last I looked, which is just insane.
That's defensive rebounding is a huge part of that, which is like that's part of the value, but it's clearly overinflated.
Is going to cite that and say like Jokic is a great defensive player. Jokic has become like he not damaging and sometimes good defensive player, but just like, this is why we're not just, spreadsheeting and averaging numbers and saying, well, this guy's the best because he's tops in all of these advanced metrics. I just think if you boil it all the way down, I think Jokic exerts a level of control over the game that no one else touches, like on a possession by possession basis. And it is unique in the league. No one else does it. There's a handful of guys ever who have controlled the game the way that he can. And I think ultimately it's just like, you'll never be able to prove this, so it's a perfect argument or disprove it. if you gave Jokic 4 average NBA players, I think he does more with those guys than SGA does with 4 average players as like, supporting cast. I just like, because Jokic can just make anything happen that whatever needs to happen on the offensive end, he will engineer that. And SGA is awesome, is great. Like this is another like macro point. Because we have a guy second in MVP and we have to make distinctions between him and the guy in first, we are not knocking the guy in second. We're just trying.
Oh, yeah.
We're just trying to say, here's the differences as nearly as we can see them. I just think Jokic is just better. I think that's just where we are. I do think it's going to be fascinating. And you brought this up. Like, are we tired of Jokic? Or by we, I mean the voters. Yeah. Like, his true shooting is only down to 65%. It was 70% last year. Like, well, he's more than this. So what are we going to give him a third MVP? It's like the same stuff that kind of maybe cost him a coin flip award last year. I don't know. This is where it gets interesting though, because those have to be your 1-2. I think if you're being serious at all about this.
I think there's a case for, so very quickly, I will say when I was parsing this, I don't know that we've ever had an MVP debate like at the top with both, where I want both players so badly to just take more threes. They're both under 5 per 100 possessions, and it annoys the shit out of me.
Not since like 2012, probably.
Yeah. So but I wanted to frame what's coming next this way. It does feel like you could flip the order a little bit, but it feels like there's 2 more names that belong in the top 5, right? Without question. Or do you only have like one name in there?
No, I think there are 2 more, like, for sure. The 5th spot gets kind of interesting, and the games limit might come into play on that one. But yeah, I think. Do you want me to give you my next 2?
Yeah, give me your 3-4.
All right, 3-4, and I don't have this in a particular order on the write up I did, so I'll just do it this way. I have Giannis 3 and Luka 4. And that's like, you could flip that either way, but just to make it easy, we'll do Giannis, Luka.
Spoiler alert, since you're going to talk about it, I did have it flip-flopped. I have Giannis 4 and Luka 3. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's, I think so maybe the way to talk about this is like, well, why do we have it one way versus the other? Because I don't feel incredibly strongly that Giannis should be there over Luka. Do you like what? You seem like you were a little more committed to like Luka should be 3rd. So what's your rationale on that?
I'm always going to default to look. Giannis's defense, I think, has been better than people realize because the Bucks until recently have been pretty bad on the defensive end. However, the things that were determining factors for me, I'm not detracting from his numbers are bonkers. And I've seen some people say that he doesn't really have a case. He has a case. I personally think that it's tough to pick him for me over Doncic, SGA, or Jokic. You picked him over Doncic. I have no qualms about that. I think it's easier to make a case for Doncic to win the award than it is for Giannis, which is wild when you look at the standings and where we typically cull MVPs from. I look at Luka's scoring and the way that he drives the offense in a way that Giannis cannot. And like the Giannis without Dame numbers, they've scared me a little bit. Like the Bucks are losing those minutes. The offense is, the defense has actually been terrible during those stretches. Surprise, surprise. But the offense has been only okay. And I also do think, and Giannis would probably admit this, I think and I understand Luka's not a good defender and that he could still complain too much, but like we know that about Luka. When I'm evaluating Giannis from his baseline, he was part of the Bucks' transition defensive issues to me for a good chunk of the season. And then like a flip kind of switched even before they got rid of, even before they brought in Doc Rivers. But I just look at the way that Luka is scoring and what he's able to do. You've seen what he's been able to do in the clutch this year as well. When you get into the on-off data, you would expect the Mavs to have a better point differential, but it's like he has Kyrie, and then who's the 3rd best player on the Mavs? And it's just going to change on any given night. And now you've added Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington into that equation, where it could also be Tim Hardaway Jr. It could also be Derek Lively II. There's just a bunch of different options. I think if you have a problem with the way that Luka Doncic plays, maybe this impacts the award. But like this is someone who's just he's leading the league in scoring when you're looking at who qualifies. He's over at over 34 points a game right now. He's scoring just wildly efficiently, a 62.2 true shooting for someone who takes so many perimeter looks to like, yeah, Giannis has 65.4 true shooting, but look where his looks are coming from. Look at how much of the facilitation he is responsible for. He's also someone who is like, he's going to be on the glass, not as much as Giannis, but that's also a positional thing. And I think that, look, Luka's been for stretches and some like he's had better defensive stretches this year than a lot of other times in his career to me. And I also think he's done a better job of not complaining as much, even though he's up there again in technicals. Look, I hate discrediting Giannis, who I think has been spectacular. And I think if you pick any one of these four, I ultimately wouldn't quibble. I just think that when we're looking at the term of value for this season specifically, what Luka Doncic is doing in Dallas to drive that offense, even with Kyrie Irving being there, who, by the way, has missed a bunch of time, and you're going to be responsible for carrying a ton of units on your own because they like to stagger them from one another. That element where Giannis, I still just don't trust him to carry units offensively without another creator on the floor is the difference. And maybe that's a flawed way of looking at it, but to me, like that top tier offense, I'm always going to prioritize it over the top tier defense, which we haven't done our all defense teams yet. Giannis is certainly a candidate to make one of those. And so that's just where I'm at. Again, if we fast forward 2-3 weeks, maybe I'm saying differently.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I think you don't need to switch my order. I don't really care that much because I do think the top two just belong by themselves, and then after that it's just not that consequential to me. I think kind of the argument I made about Jokic being just in, exerting a level of control over what's happening on the floor, like Luka probably comes closest to that, right? Like, and Giannis is not that type of player. Like Giannis can physically dominate games in stretches, and he can do that on both ends, which distinguishes him from Luka a little bit. But it does feel like actually Giannis's defense, because the Bucks have underperformed. They've been better lately, and I think you're right that Giannis has been at least somewhat culpable for that disappointing overall performance. But like you still hear, but it's like, oh, it's better now. They've cleaned some things up with Doc Rivers, and it's not Giannis's fault. But then you do hear a lot of smart people saying that like, Giannis is he's the rover on that defense, and that's a valuable role. But it's like, is he really? He's not shutting down the other team's best player necessarily. He's not like being this elite rim protector. He's not involved in a lot of pick and roll defense just because of the role that he's playing. So, I'm just Giannis's defense has been like a tricky issue because there have been years, I think, in the past where you'd say Giannis's defense would just put him over the top, even if Luka were having a season this good offensively. And Giannis isn't having that kind of year defensively. I guess maybe part of my preference for him is just that like he's done it before and he's not so old that I don't think he can do it again. But then that's not what this award is about. It's not like, who, when they really are trying their hardest or, is the best. It's who's doing it this year. That's what we're trying to figure out. So yeah, I think your argument for Luka being third is totally defensible.
I do wonder, to support your order versus mine, whether I'm underestimating or discounting Giannis having to adjust to integrating such a new like star piece in Damian Lillard. And there was functional awkwardness on offense for a while there. And at times there still is.
Yeah. I think that's sufficient there. Like they're really close. Like I think what's interesting is when you said it's a lot easier to imagine Luka winning it than Giannis, that's 100% true. So like, it doesn't really make sense that I have Giannis ahead of him, but I don't think either of them are going to win it.
And it's just I think people will point to like, oh, like Dallas is the 7th seed. It's like, okay, well, the 7th seed is like a heartbeat away from being the 4 seed in the West, basically at this point.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no.
So the 5th spot is I'm so interested to see where you went with 5.
So I mean, I don't know what I want to do with this. So should it just be I don't want to tip my hand on all NBA.
Can you give me the 2, or how many names did you consider for 5?
I think you have to think about, oh man, I think I want to say 3. I think there's 3 names you got to consider. So and some would say 4.
I think I know who the 4th one is for you. So I considered about 3 or 4, and then I winnowed it down to 2. So would you like to hear my 2?
I'll give you, okay, sure. Give me your 2.
Jason Tatum.
Okay.
And Donovan Mitchell.
Oh, wow. Those are not my 2.
Okay, here we go.
But I will say when I was doing all NBA, those 2 I agonized over trying to figure out how to get them onto one of they were in the group. So I'll give you some more names and we can just sort these out at some point. Tyrese Haliburton, who can miss like 2 games? Is that where we're at?
that's where the inconsistent, I don't know if this is inconsistent, but like he was among the names I considered. And then it's just like you get to a point where it's okay, he's at what is it? Even forget it. Let's say he just hits the game minimum. Like, let's say that's not an issue. And it seems like he's really going to try like hell to do that. He's at about 1,500 minutes as we're recording this. I don't really know how to reconcile that when we're at this level and you're looking at, okay, well, Donovan Mitchell has played almost 500 minutes, or he's only played almost 200 minutes more than that, or Tatum's played like 500 minutes more than that. How much does that matter to you in the context of this MVP discussion?
So it matters more for MVP than I'm thinking. I did my All NBA more recently, and I just decided if you're over the threshold, I do not care. Like if you're over 65 games, like I don't care if you played 1,900 minutes so far, if you played 12, whatever it is. So Tatum has to be in there. I'll give you who I have. So Halliburton's in there. You don't have to put these down. We're just going to talk through it. So Halliburton, Tatum, Kawhi, and Kevin Durant.
He was oh wow, you were much higher on KD season than I am apparently. I had Kawhi there too, and I was just like, something feels off about picking Kawhi for some reason. I feel like maybe this would be the inconsistent. Am I penalizing him for having James Harden and Paul George on his team? But he's a monster. He's been a monster this season.
I mean, like his offensive efficiency, it's like you'd think you're looking at the wrong number. Like if you go through his monthly splits, talking about Kawhi, he's shot over 45% from three in like all but 1 month. It's just like, and one of them, he's just a flat 50%. And this isn't like, he's not a crazy high volume shooter, but it's like, combine that with his defense. He's not peak Kawhi defense, but he's like close enough to be real scary. And is dominating games physically. He's just kind of, I don't know, what percentage would you say he is of absolute peak Kawhi? Is he like 90%, 95%?
He's close. And like the other thing is like when James Harden's off the court and Kawhi's on, the Clippers are still winning those by 10 points per 100 possessions, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's
should we just give it to Tatum because he's the best player on the best team, and we just need to satiate. We need to satisfy the old school MVP criteria.
Is that? But if that's going to be the criteria, he should win.
Well, you know, there might have been years where he would have. Like, probably. I mean, how many? You know,
have you done? I was doing the statistical breakdown of Donovan Mitchell and Tatum, and they are just so close. Like their true shooting percentage is identical. This was one I'm still grappling over it because like this also it impacts your first team All NBA discussion. I'm not going to have a different top 5 from MVP than I have first team All NBA like that. I like, can you, unless I come back and say, you know what, I changed my mind. I want my MVP ballot. That's one thing. I'm still just like up. I did. So I'll tell you who I have written down at the moment and you could talk me out of it. I have Donovan Mitchell written down. The stretch where he was, and what's tough for me is like, he hasn't played that many more minutes than a Tyrese Halliburton and Tatum's played way more. And I want to pick Kawhi, but there's also like, okay, when Kawhi plays without Paul George and Harden, the Clippers haven't been very good during those stretches. But Donovan Mitchell helping the Cavs navigate when they were just so brutally banged up. And like the adjustments he made as a passer, the adjustments he continues to make as a scorer, where it's not always the Donovan Mitchell show when you're watching the Cavs offense. They are playing faster, with shout out Karis LeVert for helping them really do that off of rebounds. And he's just been so much more adaptable this season. And some of the efficiency numbers have come down. He's only at like 35 something percent on off the dribble threes. But do you know who's not hitting their off the dribble threes again this year? That would be Jason Tatum. And Donovan Mitchell does not have a heavy defensive workload, but neither does Jason Tatum when you're playing with Drew Holiday and Derek White and even having Kristaps Porzingis behind you. And I know Mitchell has the same luxury with Jared Allen, but Mitchell's found himself in like tougher matchups than I think people realize because of the time that Mobley and Garland even missed. Just by virtue of being a point guard, you're going to find yourself in these tougher matchups. I didn't know how to delineate between the two. And I ultimately feel like why I almost want to go with Tatum is not because he's the best player on the best team. I'm saying I'm going with Mitchell, but I'm still wondering, am I just penalizing Tatum because the Celtics are so good without him? Is that really what this comes down to for me? But it's my whole thing is, what is Donovan Mitchell the best at on his team relative to what Jason Tatum is the best at on his team? And I don't know if Jason Tatum is going to check as many boxes. Like he's the best scorer on his team, but the margin's not going to be as big between Tatum and Brown. And then it's like, in terms of shot creation, like, I guess he's still going to win that, but is he going to be, he's not the best passer. I think you make a case that Donovan Mitchell's been the Cavs' best passer this season, even though Darius Garland exists. those are the two that I got hung up on. And so I have Mitchell. I've not written him down yet because I'm kind of want to see where you go, and I'm prepared for you to talk me into, do we just collectively go Tatum here and move on?
I feel like the safest answer is Tatum, but like I should admit, like I have Kawhi on my All NBA first team. So like by that logic, Kawhi should be my fifth MVP because we've already talked about the other four. So shouldn't Kawhi just be my fifth place MVP guy? I don't know. Like it seems like it should be that simple. I did not give Donovan Mitchell the credit that I should have. He should be in this mix, just looking at the numbers comparatively right now. And he has the narrative angle too. Just like I carried this team that everybody thought was cooked when Evan Mobley and Garland and like everybody was hurt. So he has. I think though, in addition to the best player, best team narrative thing for Tatum, there's also the idea that like, oh, he's like sacrificing. Everybody kind of likes that angle. I don't know how true that is, but that's very much out there. So if you're just looking for another reason to favor Tatum, some people would be persuaded by that. I think Kawhi is the best player of those guys that we've talked about. Do you think that's fair?
Do you, I guess like when healthy, yes, but what how's that factor into it? And even what I mentioned, what I was going to say, how much should these anecdotal arguments matter where so we're going to also penalize Tatum because his team wasn't like banged up at some point in the season?
Yeah.
This is hard, but I am interested. So you're fine with having someone on your top 5 MVP ballot and not making all NBA?
Not making all NBA first team. Well, that's the thing. Like, I guess you're forcing me to like decide if my criteria is slightly different. Which I guess it probably is because the volume of playing time for me for all NBA is once you're over the threshold, I don't care how much more or less you have than everybody else that's over that threshold. Whereas MVP, like, yeah, if there's a 500-minute difference, like that is a measure of value, right? Like that should matter. So yeah, I don't know. So if you're gonna go Mitchell, I'm not gonna talk you out of it. I think I'm gonna
stick. I think I'm gonna stick. And this is like, I hate being controversial, but I also need to get to a point where like this is what I believe in this moment, and it could change. I have Donovan Mitchell, and then I have Jason Tatum 6. And then just because we talked about Kawhi, I did have Kawhi 7th. And I will say the stuff with Halliburton just not like, I understand that's only 200 minutes here, 500 minutes there, but like he was still targeted on defense for so much of the year. It's clear how important he is. These players, they're not even going after. Donovan Mitchell's been better defensively than Tyrese Halliburton. This is like surprise.
Most players have
the name that I couldn't get. I thought about, but I just couldn't get there with. And I'm not trying to insult him because he's gonna make an All NBA team. Was Jalen Brunson? Was like someone who else was in this group for me. I just couldn't get there with Halliburton. If like we had an 8, like if I was gonna go 8 deep. I think I had Halliburton 8th. I'll go double check there. But like Brunson was on my shorter list there. But I'm going to stick with Mitchell. I had Mitchell, Tatum, and Kawhi since those were the names that we predominantly talked about.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go Kawhi. I'm going to have Kawhi be my number 5.
Which, by the way, I think is a completely reasonable, if not the correct choice.
Well, no, it's just like this chunk of guys is really difficult. The top 4 was a different thing. So I'll go Kawhi 5. I think I'm going to go Tatum 6, Mitchell 7. You really did talk me into Mitchell. And just to complete it, I think I'm going to put Halliburton 8. I think the volume does hurt him there. And look, he might.
We both have Tyrese Halliburton 8. I don't think I'm going to double check my list, make sure I didn't have Jalen Brunson ahead of him since I have a separate. Oh, I did. Am I going to stick with that? No. I'm not going to. I'm going to put Tyrese there, and then I would have. I don't Jalen Brunson. Like Jalen Brunson, by the way, he would probably finish top 10 in MVP voting as of now. Would be my guess. That's a hell of an accomplishment.
Yeah. I'll give you my 9 and 10. I have Durant was someone that I really did give thought to putting on All NBA first team. So he's got to be. I got to go Durant 9, and I'm going to homer it and have Steph 10, edging out Jalen Brunson.
Ooh, okay. So you had Kevin Durant 9. And you had who? Steph Curry 10. That's
Steph 10.
Steph has been clutch as hell this year. So I had Jalen Brunson 9. And I think this one's gonna. Is that who I had 9? I feel like I don't even know my own list at this point. I did not have. Wow. Oh no, I had Jalen Brunson. I had him ahead of Tyrese. Did I do that? But I changed it. So Tyrese, Jalen at 9, and then my 10th was LeBron James. This is not just. Am I giving him the age 39 bump? Maybe this dude is shooting like 1,000,000,000%. on pull-up three-pointers this year, still hitting his twos at an unbelievable clip. The way he's still able to take over games as both scorer and passer. The Lakers defense is all over the place. They're worse with Anthony Davis on the floor. So those are proof that numbers can be loud. He has not been among the Lakers like defensive issues. And I think the whole LeBron and AD have played like double the amount of possessions together this season so far than they played all of last year. And the Lakers are basically a worse team or the same team. That to me just says more about the supporting cast that's around them and how they're faring. So I did have Lucy. I guess I did go. How many deep did I go here? I went like 14 or 13 names deep, but I had Devin Booker after LeBron. And then I did have Steph, and I had Kevin Durant was in there as well. But like, these are my 10. I don't feel great about the 10th spot. That after like figuring out the Mitchell Tatum Kawhi thing, that was like the toughest, probably because it's the last one.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm trying to see like, so the difference we have, so our top 8 is the same, just in a slightly different order. And I think after that 8 is where it gets kind of like, yeah, that feels like the cutoff of where it's like, we're not really talking about guys that have a shot at winning it anymore.
And the thing for me too is like, so when you're looking at Brunson, and this will impact like when we talk about All-NBA, the level of difficulty on his role, I understand you can't penalize guys for having a better supporting cast, but like what he needs to drive in the confines of, for most of the time, imperfect spacing, even when most of the Knicks' best players are available, like I value stuff like that. And I think people will criticize, well, the Lakers aren't good, the Warriors aren't good. This is like the value that Steph and LeBron are bringing to the table right now. Like even people just point out, why is a Phoenix Sun on here? It's like, well, Kevin Durant hasn't missed a shot like ever this season unless it's the fourth quarter. So just like, this is tough, man. I don't feel good about my bottom of the ballot. I'll say that. I would be able to change this a million times.
It really, with what is there, like a third of the season left as we're recording this? It's gonna be Jokic or SGA. Wouldn't you be stunned if I guess if Luka went on like a crazy heater and the Mavs, they've been hot, but if they won, if they were the best team in the league the rest of the way record wise, and Luka like sustained his numbers, I think we might really have a 3-man race.
What I also think is interesting is how many fucks does Jokic give about winning this award? Because like we could get to the middle of March, and if he just like hits cruise control until the playoffs, that's going to impact that. Like that'll help SGA, but it'll also help Giannis and Doncic more. Like those. That's why I still think those 3 guys are in play. I just can't. I'd be shocked if it was someone other than. Personally, I'd be shocked if it was some other than Doncic, SGA, or Jokic. But like Giannis wouldn't be flooring because he's that good.
Yeah, he is. I think he's got a pretty serious uphill climb just because of how down everyone has been on the Bucks for most of the year and just like disappointed by them. But yeah, look, it's. I think you get past those top 3 or 4, and then we're just kind of having fun with this. So that was like half an hour on MVP.
So we'll go quicker on because I don't think these other ones are as controversial. And like we said, now only the first 3 names matter more than the honorable mentions. So are you good with? Do you want to pick a different award, or do you want to go to defensive?
No, dealer's choice. I hijacked our order, so you can pick the next one.
Well, you know what? Can we go to one that I feel like should just be like easier, like and quick?
Sure.
Let's go to clutch player of the year.
Oh, okay.
Who do you want to just give me like who your 3 are here, or what your ballot looks like for clutch player?
Yeah, let me pull this up here. Okay. Oh man, I'm such a homer. So Steph is my clutch player of the year.
Wait, no, you're not. You know why you're not a homer? I also picked Steph.
Okay. So I'm sure I'm 1,000,000% sure you saw this. Is like he's got the most clutch points. He's hit like 28 of 59 from 3 or something absurd like that. And the Warriors are like +3 in his 100 and some odd clutch minutes. Don't care. Like you can't tell me the guy's making a million threes and scoring the most clutch points and like he's not helping them be better than they'd otherwise be. So look, there is ample room for pushback on the basis of like he's been great, but the Warriors have not been a good clutch team at all. So like that's fine, but I think he's just had to be number 1 for me. There's a lot of ways to go here. I have DeRozan as my number 2.
Oh wow, we're in lockstep here.
Are we? We probably just researched the same way. Why don't you give me your number 3 just to change it up?
I honestly forgot my number 3. Let me look at this. I'm like stunned that we had from the pool of players that were here. I think I can't remember if I had. Let me scroll up here. Oh, I have Jokic as my number 3, and it was between. What's ironic? It was between him and Shea for my number 4 for like Shea is my number 4. It was like those two that it came down to.
I didn't go that deep on this after the top couple, but just you can just put these in any order. I think I'd probably go Dame as up be third for me. Kobe White has quietly had that's 2 bulls in the clutch leaderboard here. Another guy had Derek White has had a great clutch season, and Jokic is also on my down ballot pick.
I also had, so you had Jokic there, like you said, that order doesn't really. Why do I keep doing this? That order doesn't matter for you. I did go fairly deep. Oh no, wait, I stopped. I have Luka at 5, and that's where I stopped at for my ballot. Yeah. Look, when you go to, so you mentioned like the shots made, but if you do care about like numbers, Unpredictable has like clutch win probability added, and so like it calls it from all these different stats. Giannis comes in at 1, Shea is 2, Steph is 3, Jokic is 4, Doncic is 5. So like our picks line up pretty well with that. I did ultimately go with Steph though. When you look at the number of clutch shots he has hit relative to everybody else, I know part of that is, well, you need to be in these situations to make those shots. And so this could be an indictment of how much clutch time the Warriors have played. But like the gap is just so like not even close when you're looking at the total shots made. He has made 51 shots in the clutch, which is 13 more than second place, which is DeMar DeRozan. And De'Aaron Fox is up there again at 37 at number 3. So, and by the way, Jokic, I didn't know this, number 5, and Shea is 8. So there you go. I feel better about some of my choices here.
A crazy stat, same vein. So this is a couple days old now, but Steph had 28 made threes in the clutch. That's more than the next 2 most prolific 3-point hitters combined, which is Buddy Hield has 11 and Derek White has 10. So he's 50.5% from the field, 47.5% from deep. Like this is with every team, every person in every arena knowing like, don't let him 1 touch the ball, 2 shoot the ball. And he's making half of a ridiculous volume of clutch shots like that. You have to factor in degree of difficulty, like a little bit, because like, I guess like this is an argument too for DeRozan, because like DeRozan's just creating these shots. Like it's very different from Steph, where it's just like DeRozan just goes to work, inside the 3-point line and gets buckets. And a ton of free throws, by the way, too, for both Steph and DeRozan. That's another big factor in them rating highly.
Same with, isn't Dame like shooting like perfect from the line?
He's got a ton of free throws too, which is
43 of 45. That is bonkers in the clutch from the foul line.
I think I'm glad we had Steph. Let's see. Steph's 35 of 37 from the foul line in the clutch. Not bad.
Just ridiculous. I mean, if the Warriors were a little bit better, he would be shooting up MVP ballots too, which is wild.
He does not have a chance though. All right, that was good. That was a quick one. Because who cares about clutch? Like there's clutch.
There's gonna be people who are mad. Like who did we forget? Why? I mean, well, you did mention Kobe White. So why didn't Kobe White win this award? Or why isn't Alex Caruso on here? Or I don't know, Trae Young or somebody. I was surprised you had Dame. I know he's shooting well on 2s in the clutch, but he's been pretty off from 3.
Because he made a game-winning shot this year, Dan. And it was Dame time. That's why.
That's awesome. That's really fair. But that's why if I went strictly by that, it feels like Shea should win. Just not even looking at, but I'm just thinking of moments in my head that it would be, if it was completely anecdotal, I'd probably go with Shea. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, right. If you said Steph is probably the answer, but like if you said, it's a last second possession, you need someone to get you a decent scoring opportunity, like you could not go wrong with Shea just because he's the toughest cover in the league. He's just going to find a way to get a shot or get fouled. So that seems pretty clutch to me. I we don't need to go further down my ballot, but I would have Shea on there as like you can't not say this guy, but whatever.
No, I'm going to leave him off your ballot so you look like an asshole. Well, I'm honestly only leaving him off because I only went 5 names deep.
I'm trying to overcompensate by adding all these extra names. If I prefer not to have to, so if you're only going to do 4, I'll do that too.
Oh, I did have Luka. I don't know why I didn't write him in there, but so which award do we want to go to next? Now it's your turn.
Let's pick. I think let's save Defensive Player of the Year because that's kind of that discussion is interesting. Oh, this is a hard one. Let's do Most Improved.
Oh man, I hate you. I mean, we had to get to it, but like I don't want to do it. So
this is here's I mean, we both hate this one because it's like, what does that even mean? If you're deep in the NBA silo like we are, it's like everyone's annoyed by. There's similar arguments about 6-man that we'll get to. Everyone's annoyed by the idea. It's like, well, don't give Most Improved to a guy that's young that just started playing more, right? Like, don't give it to the guy that increased his points per game by whatever because he went from this is the kind of the Tyrese Maxey argument a little bit. Like his role got bigger. He didn't really change who he was as a player. I think I like the idea of viewing this as like who actually like improved in a way that you could point to, like whether it's a stat or whether it's like just an eye test thing. Like he's different now. Like that to me is what this award is sort of more supposed to be about. But of course, there's no actual criteria, so you can kind of do what you want with it.
Well, the other criteria I have personally, and I will say you'll be happy about this player pushed the boundaries of it. I don't like picking second year players. The last time I came closest to actually giving an exception to the rule, I think it was De'Aaron Fox's sophomore campaign, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he had a monster second year. That was defensible.
But if you are already coming off a rookie campaign where you can say it's not just, oh, I finished in top 3 rookie of the year voting, but like, oh, you're on this star trajectory and then you exceed those expectations. J-Dub came very close to cracking my top 3. He did not ultimately, but like when you look at just like he's hitting step backs and turnarounds and just running the offense more than he was last year. Again, you expect to see that sort of stark improvement year over year, which is why I'm going to hold to that. But if someone comes in here and if you're one of them and votes for J-Dub, the level of pushback I will provide is non-existent.
he's a really he's on my ballot, obviously, but like I've been so absurd.
He's on every one of your ballots, right? All defensive player of the year, and
he's on all of them. He's in play. Can you just copy paste his name in like second place for all these awards? I think that's right. I think he didn't win it for me. He's like kind of down ballot, but like he's I mean the level, the types of skills that he has this year, you cannot have said, oh, at the end of last year, like, yeah, he'll definitely be able to do that. Like that just every wide open 3 he takes seems like it's going in. He can get to the basket, like just however he needs to. He's a good defender. Like he's just really become like, I know I've been super hyperbolic. Like it's almost a bit at this point, like how much I talk him up, but like if that dude makes like 7 all-star games, like not going to be surprised over here. Like that's just like, that is what the trajectory he's on now.
He's gone from like, oh, this could be an all-star to it's, oh, how many all-NBA teams will J-Dub make?
I saw a thing today where someone was, I forget where it was, might've been Twitter, where someone was like, what do you think Jalen, like if Jalen Williams hits like his 90th percentile outcome, like he hits, of all the range of players he could possibly be, like he gets to, the top 10% of what he can be, who is that? And someone was like, well, Kawhi, or maybe Harden. I don't know. It's like, and then you kind of squint and you're like, yeah, I can kind of see both. I don't know.
Is that like, what if Harden and Kawhi Leonard had a baby? Because J-Dub's a better passer, projects to be at least than Kawhi.
Yeah, it's crazy. So where should we put him? You're not, how high do you have him on yours?
No, so I didn't, like I said, I did 3 deep and then the rest are just like, if you want me to throw my honorable, like this would be a good thing. Should I just throw my honorable mentions down? I went 10 deep. So I have 7 honorable mentions.
Yeah, do that.
Okay, so I'm going to put them all at once. How's that? Rather than, and I'll go through them quick fire. So I have Jalen Johnson, who I thought was going to win the award at one point. I trust his 3-pointer, even though he's dipped below 35% now. I trust his defensive malleability, even though the Hawks kind of suck on that end of the floor. Just what he can do as a playmaker, connective tissue on offense. I do think he's actually is a pretty good defender, even if he's going to get caught out of position or ball watching a little bit too much. I couldn't get there because the level of self-creation on offense compared to the players who are actually going to appear on my ballot at top of my ballot just isn't there. I have Cam Thomas. I didn't know how to treat him because it feels like he's finally just getting an opportunity. He's improved a little bit as a passer. He has not improved his shot selection. It's just going in. And so like I've had a tough time reconciling that. He's not a better defender. He's had moments, but he's not a good defender. Denny Avdia was actually, after Jalen Johnson, my toughest player to leave off of here. And he might crack my top 3 if he continues to play the way that he does. He's been a little bit, even though the volume isn't there, he seems more confident in his 3. He's more aggressive inside the arc. The passing is getting way better, whether it's from like he's actually orchestrating from a standstill, having run half-court sets, or running in transition. The defense is still there. I think Bilal Coulibaly will take on some of the toughest assignments. Like Denny Avdia has like one of the heavier, tougher defensive workloads in the league. He's a lot faster and smarter than I think people give him credit for. He's just like, if they had kind of juiced up his role the way they have over the past month or so, like from the jump, like this might have just been his award to run away with. I have Tyrese Maxey, and my concerns are the same as yours. When I watch him, he's handling a heavier workload, and that does matter. Like, we're talking about someone who went from averaging 20 points to 25 points or whatever it is. His efficiency is still above average, but he's not a completely different player. He still struggles to kind of like, if he can't go north-south, like a lot of his game is just nuked or neutered, it feels like. I hate discrediting him. I have J-Dub was on there. Tyrese Halliburton just going from all-star, superstar to MVP megastar.
Yeah.
That type of jump is the hardest to make. The defense bothers me a little bit. And this is, again, it's just like he's so close. And this is the same with Jalen Johnson. They might not meet the games threshold depending on what happens the rest of the year. And then Jonathan Kuminga, kind of a late riser in this one, just been absolutely swallowing worlds there. Yeah. So that was like, those were the 10 names. And I'm sure there are others that people could, I did see this, and it was a very, someone who I actually might've been, I don't know. I don't want to say the names. I don't want to be wrong, but someone's talking about Luka Doncic for most improved because of all the stuff he's doing at different levels of offense and some of the ways he's changed his defense and not complaining. I can't get there. Like the closest I could have come was that first or second Steph MVP season, whichever it was, where it was just like, oh, yeah, like, okay, yeah, he could win most improved.
Yeah, that's right. Gosh, I remember making that, like starting to make that argument, like
MVP or the second.
So I think there was a case. Well, there was a case both MVP years, but the second year was when it was like
this season, and here's why.
it was like, yeah, right. Look at all this shit he has to deal with. No, I remember making the case for Steph as most improved in his unanimous MVP year facetiously at first, but then being like, I don't know, like, this guy's way better all of a sudden. But yeah, no, I love your list. The only guys I didn't have, and I just regret because I didn't think about them, were Thomas and Halliburton. The Halliburton thing is really interesting because like I always say that about teams. It's like the hardest leap to make is not from like 45 to 55 wins. It's like from 55 to like, you might win 62 or whatever. Like the very good to great leap is super hard. Halliburton made the very good to great leap. At the same time, it feels like he's just kind of doing more of the same stuff. Like he's not a different guy, but like, should we penalize him for that? Like, that feels like, well, it's hard to do more of something like that. That's why great players have high volume stats.
And I think so he can drive his case ultimately to me is sort of too similar to Tyrese Maxey's, but it's just like he can drive the entire fucking thing in a way that Tyrese Maxey can't, which again is not a shot at Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah.
By the way, a late entry into this, I couldn't pick him just because the other thing that's tough, where I think some people forget, including myself, there's a lot of recency bias here. And so you forget that it's like a full season award. But like Cade Cunningham, quietly shooting 40% on step back threes this year. And he's been even higher than that of late. This is just someone, he's gotten the turnovers under control. I don't think he belongs at the top of the ballot on this, but I just wanted to give him sort of a shout out. And that's ultimately, I know some people go with deep cuts. And like last year, I talked about Hamidou Diallo a little bit in this award. I'm always invariably going to value, like, it's not just how big the leap was, it's how difficult was this leap. And so it's like when you're working from a lower baseline, so like we can talk about deep cuts, but like even Cam Thomas is sort of just like the baseline from which he was working was just so low that I have him technically fifth, but I didn't rank after Johnson. I probably would have had Avdia fifth, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, if you were only measuring Avdia over like the last, I don't know, 5-6 weeks.
Yeah,
he might just win it. He's not gonna win it, but yeah. Okay, so I think you kind of have to. I'll start at the top, and then we'll work down. And because we've talked about,
I hope we don't have the same guy again. Otherwise, this is a terrible podcast. I mean, it's a good podcast, but like,
I think we do. My number one is Scotty Barnes.
Oh no, I have Jared Allen. No, I'm just kidding. I have Scotty Barnes too. I'm just kidding.
I was like, what? Did he get back? How many apologies do we owe this guy? The Barnes case is kind of what I was alluding to, is like, he was a really suspect jump shooter. And now he's like, it was better than passable for a lot of the year, but now he's almost doubled his volume from 35-ish%, 34.6 to be exact. When I was looking this up from 28.1%, he's proving that he can be like, maybe you probably still want another facilitator, but he can run your offense. He's become a better defensive player. He just has become, it's interesting. Like, he won Rookie of the Year. That still felt weird to me, but he's kind of with an interim year in that second year where everybody was down on him. He's kind of like reassumed the trajectory that a lot of people who really loved him as a rookie thought he would be on. So it's just he's added skills. I think that's the key, and he's taken on a bigger role at the same time and has just improved in like however you want to categorize improvement. I feel like it applies to Scotty Barnes. Do you think that's fair?
Yes, and I think the big and what really differentiates him, and I think you touched on it, I just want to drive it home, is how much different his game looks at both ends of the floor. Where it's, you know what, like the pull-up jumper, that didn't really stay, but the stuff he's doing on the interior as a facilitator, as a passer, and then his defensive role has changed under Darko Rajakovic for the better. He's been both more disruptive and smarter, to where he's just like his closeouts are better, harder, more efficient, blocking jumpers. He is a better all-around player. And I think that type of a comprehensive leap, it absolutely matters. And so I even think you could look at it from, well, if you're like, you could say, well, his sophomore year was kind of all over the place. Is he getting that bump because no, it's like, if you measure him from his rookie year, when he won Rookie of the Year, like he is eons better from that. And to say like, I feel like this is someone who is now an all NBA caliber player moving forward. That's not something you could say last season. Maybe it's not something you would have said after his rookie season. And so I won't say he's the clear winner, but I'm surprised that I feel like how the discourse has moved away from him. I guess because he had a rough stretch, like after the trades were made. And I think that's why the door is still open. But like, this is still his award to lose for me.
I think that's right. I bet we have the same second guy too. Kobe White is my number 2.
Oh man.
Is it yours too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure our argument will be similar. Like, his kind of the same idea. His role grew in a major way, and it had to do with injuries in part, but it also had to do with him just getting better. And the jump he took was from like, one, is this guy like a rotation caliber combo guard, to, oh, this guy's a starting point guard and he's a good one. Like that, it's almost like, in addition to adding skills, he sort of solidified himself as being capable of playing a more valuable position, which is like, I struggle. I'm sure there are examples, but like, I struggle to think of another guy that within the span of a year went from an iffy one type of player to a definite like other type, and it's like, it's not like he went from being a guard to a power forward or whatever, but it's like, that's a really different thing. If you can say he's got the ball every night, like he's our primary initiator and a massive 3-point threat and a scoring threat, like that's just a different thing. So I really value that. And so obviously you did too, because you had the same guy at number 2.
Yeah, he is just, the command on the game that he has on offense, it belies just scoring is what it feels like right now to me. And I think that's why I felt comfortable putting him here. And then just the raw number jump is just, you don't want to get too caught up in that because you want to look at how his role has changed. It's like, well, no, his role has changed. Just outlet. He's like, you outlet. He's a point guard now, or a floor general. However, if you don't want to get bogged down by
lead ball handler, whatever.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming we have, just because you didn't question why he wasn't in my honorable mention, we probably have the same number 3 too, right?
Well, you almost, you almost are talking me into having Jalen Williams be my number 3. I think I better do that so that we don't have the same number 3. So
I think you should go with like who you want to put there.
No, you can have Şengün at 3 because I'm sure that's who you have.
I do.
And that's who I had, but I'm going to change it up. Make the Şengün case. It's a little bit, because I think some people could say, if you don't, that he's just doing more of the same. But why is that not the case for Şengün?
So one, because like he's getting more touches, like, so that's just not the same thing. And so the volume is there. I'm assuming that you have Şengün at 4 now. So I'll
correct.
Just throw him over for that. Because you're a hater. The defense has gotten a lot better. I don't know how much of that has to do with, okay, well, Jabari Smith Jr. got better defensively. Tari Eason before the leg injury is there. Dylan Brooks is there. Fred VanVleet before he's banged up is there. He's in the right spots more. I think he's quicker on defense than he's been over his first couple seasons. And then when you look at what he's doing on offense, there's stuff to be desired where it's kind of like the Sabonis stuff where you just wish he could take and make more like longer range jumpers, not even just 3-pointers. The way he's able to facilitate the offense. Do you need him to lead the break? Do you need him to be in the half court and go downhill with his shoulder? Do you need to do it from the elbows and the paint on the block, whatever? He can facilitate the offense from all over the floor, also as like a lead ball handler, which is something that, and I'm not using this to discredit, because I think Domantas Sabonis has had a hell of a season again, even though the kind of Sabonis without Fox minutes are thorny.
Yeah.
He can jumpstart an offense in more ways than Sabonis, but in fewer ways than Jokic. I hate the Jokic comp so much for him because he just plays, he's just not like there's his game, the cadence to it, and even the aesthetics are just so different when you really watch it. And so when you look at the way that he's just able to he's like this force of nature facilitator. That's how I would almost describe it. Where it's like Nikola Jokic feels more cerebral. And it's like, what if Russell Westbrook, like if you took that mindset and translated it to someone who was just pass first? Mm-hmm. And that's what Şengün feels like. Maybe that's not the best way to sort of go about it. And then like, yeah, I mean, you dig into the numbers and just like those are up for him this season. And part of that is okay, well, they're actually using him differently, but that's going to have to be part and parcel of any most improved player case anyway. And so I considered having him, I think, in the top 3. I think there's a case for any of these guys just outright winning the award.
I'll just throw out a couple more. They're mostly similar to yours. I have Maxey. Even though I just dumped on he's just doing more. Kuminga's there for me. Avdia's there. Jalen Johnson for sure is there. Trying to think if there's anybody else that I think that's kind of where I mean, Halliburton, you make a good point. Like,
you didn't have Kuminga on your list?
I know I do have Kuminga.
Oh, okay.
I said him before Jalen Johnson, but that doesn't matter. The order doesn't matter.
I am wondering, like, who are we just forgetting? Like, does Kelly Olynyk belong on this list by chance just because of what he was doing as a passer in Utah?
That's ridiculous. Don't say that.
Well, I'm just asking questions.
Grant. I'm trying to think. I don't have any more names on the top of my head. I'm trying to think who are the first-time All-Stars this year? Maybe that's someplace to start. We probably named a lot of them.
Let me check it real quick. This is good.
I mean, there was Scotty. Who else was a first-time All-Star? Derek White ultimately didn't make it. I do think I will say this.
Derek White.
You made the joke, but like Jared Allen has really broadened his offense this year. And so I just like to give him a little shout out. I'm not saying he belongs on this list. I also think Max Strus, just as a playmaker this year, the stuff that he has done there, that's another name you could throw out.
What about Brunson?
Isn't that kind of just like, I mean, he added the off the dribble 3, which is just like become one of the most efficient shooters on off the dribble 3s. So if you wanted to have him there,
he was already really
like a Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey case though for him, right?
Yeah. I think I was just going to pull him up to see like if his shot diet's all that much different. I mean, a lot of it is Brunson was, I mean, he's up 4 points, shooting a couple more 3s a game, getting the line a little.
How about Dante DiVincenzo becoming the best 3-point shooter in the NBA?
I was stunned when that stat went around of him having the third most three-point makes in the league this year. Like, I could not. I mean, watching him all year with the Warriors last year, I liked him, but it was just like, I understand who this player is, and there's no room to get better. And it turns out, just shooting a ton more 3s, there is room to get better. That's a good one.
Jalen Suggs. I'm just going deep cuts. Jalen Suggs, Aaron Nesmith for sure before he got injured was there.
Suggs is a really good one because everybody who's listened to this knows, like, I just would dump on Suggs all the time. Like, oh, he's got no chance. He can't make a post entry pass. He can't make a shot. So that defense doesn't matter. Well, now it does. Now the defense matters because he's like a credible offensive player.
I'm going to throw this one out here, and he's going to come up again. Isaiah Joe.
Love Isaiah Joe. I'm not going to fight you.
He does so much more than anyone else realizes. Not just me, but like then I would say a lot of people realize. That's my snooty Winnie the Pooh meme. You're free to troll me for what. Now that we've mentioned Isaiah Joe, I guess it's probably time to move on.
Yeah, right? Time to move on. Your turn to pick, I think.
Let's go. I don't want to get too toxic at this point, so let's steer clear of Rookie of the Year. How about we go to Executive of the Year? That feels like it could be another quick one.
Okay.
So I think we both are going to have the top number one if we want to work our way from there. But who do you regal? Wow, we just had a 20-minute discussion on most improved player. Anyway,
so this is one that I'm like concerned I'm going to forget somebody, but my number one's Brad Stevens.
Yeah, I just don't. I went on Mad Boosties, which is like an NBA pod. It's an NBA podcast that's actually made by the NBA, which always, by the way, it throws me when I get a notification like, oh, the NBA tagged you in a tweet. And I'm like, why? But I went on that podcast and I officially apologized for underestimating the Celtics this year.
Oh, good.
Brad Stevens, I think the only thing that you could, like, the Kristaps Porzingis trade has worked out well on the court. Getting Drew Holiday has certainly worked out well for them too, even though like his offense is scaled back, but that's just what happens. Getting Xavier Tillman, and then like just getting Xavier, like having that guy on your team, you built they should be the championship favorite, but because we know the Nuggets, like they're no worse than the second most likely team to win the title right now. The only thing you could quibble about is the Jaylen Brown Supermax, and that's kind of just like, what did you want the guy to do? Like, it's just like you didn't really have a ton of leverage there. And if anything, it's not your money. So kudos to him for spending, Grouseback's money. So I think it was clearly him. Can I give you my number 2? And I'm not confident in it.
Yeah, please. I'm not confident in any of the rest of these, by the way, so I'm with you. It's my number 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I'm reticent to say this just because we might not see the team that he built together at all this season, but like the OG Anunoby trade was very much win-win. But when you see not just the impact he had defensively, but offensively by removing RJ Barrett's ball handling and the way that the Knicks were using him, I feel like the Raptors are using him differently, even though that RJ Barrett continues to say that they're not. It was a risk, but it was panning out before the injury. And then to go out and make the Bojan Bogdanović move at the deadline, I think he's not been great for them. I think he's going to be huge. Like he'll eventually settle into his role come playoff time. I said the Dante DiVincenzo signing was fine. And Knicks fans were like, we cured our floor spacing. 1, no, you didn't.
Nobody saw that coming.
But 2, you came a lot closer to it than I thought you were going to because he turned to the best 3-point shooter in the league. And that story that Fred Katz and I think Anthony Slater of The Athletic did about him learning from Steph Curry was really good. People should check it out. I actually did not finish it. So that's me sort of like, that's like retweeting it without reading it, I guess. But go read it anyway. So I'm just wondering if are we overweighting this because it's still so much of a concept? But I think you look the roster they built, even the Josh Hart deal is just like to get him to opt in and then extend. So gave you more flexibility this year under the hard cap. That was very smart maneuvering there. Mm-hmm. So I do think he belongs at number 2 for now, but there are definitely other candidates that I think could still sneak up on him.
Yeah. Those were the 2. I preface this by saying I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody and I don't feel good about any of the rest of this. Those are my top 2. And it was, I don't think there's any room to argue there. I don't really have an order for my next 3 names.
You need to pick a third. I'm gonna hold you. You need to pick a third.
All right. I'm picking a third. I think, am I going to really do this?
Don't.
I think I'm going to do Daryl Morey.
Oh, all right. Well, I think Chris Paul and James Harden would disagree, but please make your case.
I mean, so he gets off the James Harden thing. I mean, all right. I already said it. Whatever. Got off the James Harden situation. Made it created.
Go on.
That he created. Made it horrible.
That's like please putting
out of this because I can't even
your own fire.
What else he did when I wrote this up for BR the other day. What else did Daryl? What else have the Sixers done here? Kelly Oubre on the minimum was good. What else did they do?
Hiring Nick Nurse was clearly a good decision.
Hiring Nick Nurse was smart. Moving on from Doc Rivers was smart. There was another transaction though that and now I can't remember. Who's your third while I think about it?
So I have Kevin Pritchard of the Pacers. A lot goes into this. I think so. 1, look at what happened with the Bruce Brown deal and how you were able to use that as primary salary matching in the Siakam trade so that you didn't get to a point where you needed to include Jarris Walker or Bennedict Mathurin. And then just look at the Pascal Siakam trade in a vacuum where it's, it cost you 3 first rounders. Guess what? 2 of those are going to be bottom 10 in this year's draft, which everyone seems to hate. That's a huge swing. I like the Jarris Walker stuff is TBD. He clearly has not been good enough defensively, which is why he's not seeing the floor. Who's been good enough defensively to see the floor? Ben Shepherd. That's a nice little pickup by them. I guess you can quibble over, did they get good value from the Buddy Hield deal with just seconds? And shouldn't they have just let him leave if they didn't want to? Wasn't he more valuable to them?
That was the other Sixers thing. I liked the Hield trade. That was one of the other ones I liked.
So sorry, I get not liking that, but just sort of having by the way, getting Halliburton locked up with, he doesn't even have a player option on his deal, correct? So that's a win. I'll double check that in case I don't want to be too wrong on that. But so just even getting him to sign the extension is just, I'm going to say that's a win, even though it was kind of a no-brainer for him. So the Siakam trade really did seal it for me. It gave me pause though, of course, when you look at, and no, he does not have a player option apparently. So, I mean, there's the language to get the Supermax. They'll be happy to pay it if he's going to make, and he will probably if he meets the game's minimum. So I like a lot of what the Pacers did, and I think they've kind of been understated. There's some TBD-ness to there, but the fact that we don't look at Jarris Walker and say, well, he was definitely the wrong pick. Like we haven't seen enough of Taylor Hendricks to say that. We haven't even seen enough of Bilal Coulibaly to say that. So I really like, and I also feel like this might be a reflection of how not sparse the field is, but just how it didn't feel like this was a seismic off season or like even year for trades. Because are you going to give it to Lawrence Frank for just like pulling off the James Harden trade? Is that something you're going to do? I mean, sure. If that's your logic, I think you could make a case for, if you want me to throw, I have a bunch of other names here. Like
I got a couple more. Maybe one of these is yours. No particular order, but what about Raphael Stone in Houston? Like,
yeah, so
change the culture of the franchise, new head coach. I think Amen Thompson was still a defensible pick there. The Dylan Brooks contract has worked out. The Van Fleet, like just the weird at the time, right? It was strange that like, what is Houston's just going to throw all this like short-term money at guys and try to compete? Like most of you struggle to empowering Şengün, I guess. Although is Brook Lopez actually the Rockets executive of the year for not signing there and letting Şengün become who he became? That's I don't know, but I think he deserves mention, right? Like the Rockets have way more hits than misses transactionally for the last 8-10 months.
Yeah, I had him. He was my 5th, but I didn't really rank these. For my 4th, and I didn't really know how to reconcile this, but like the Cavs low key had a heck of an offseason. When you look at getting Max Strus, it seems like Dean Wade and Sam Merrill should be playing over George Niang at this point, but to have the option of Niang, who really did help you navigate those injuries exceptionally well, getting Karis LeVert back on a deal that's eminently movable and he's been helping you, I think. And the Craig Porter Jr. find, by the way,
that's a good one.
Yeah. So I had him. There's one. So I do think, and I'm overcompensating because I destroyed him when he made this deal. But Sam Presti getting Case and Wallace is a big deal. Then going out and like Gordon Hayward at the deadline, where it's like you're sort of rolling stuff into it. That's someone who deserves a mention. I also had, how many more names do I have here?
I have one more.
Give me yours.
By the way, you're never going to go wrong putting Sam Presti on a list of the league's best executives.
Well, they just didn't do, like, unless I'm forgetting something, they didn't do too much.
No, they didn't. I think Mike Dunleavy did a really good job. Like Pajemski, where he got him, Trace Jackson-Davis, last pick of the draft, is playing rotation minutes. Got off the Jordan Poole contract. Whatever you think about Chris Paul, like now Jordan Poole's contract is in the conversation for one of the worst in the league. He's gotten benched in Washington, which is really hard to do. Did not extend Klay Thompson, which I think some other executives might have, like just, out of, I don't know, sentiment. So like, there's nothing major there, but like some bullets dodged and like just an objectively very good draft. So I think he's not like a top 3, but I think he warrants a mention.
No, that you made I didn't even, I like kind of just, I love pod, so I don't know why I didn't factor that in. 2 more names I had. One of them, yours, Daryl Morey. Again, long list, didn't rank them. Lawrence Frank, just like the Clippers having the guts. They do have PJ Tucker on their roster now. I think I have 2 more names. So this one, I'm not kidding. Like the ability for them to actually reset Michael Winger, Will Dawkins in Washington. I think they deserve an honorable mention. And I think this is going to draw criticism. And I don't even know who you can't, like, could you technically even vote for him? But he had a good trade deadline, and it turns out they had a good draft when we thought they were terrible. You see it.
Yeah. Take this award on the way out to your quote unquote consultant job in the.
I'm saying he set, if he wasn't the one making any of those decisions, okay, fine. Like he set the Hornets up really nicely moving forward now. I wouldn't have kept him either, but let's give him his flowers for how he left.
You and I have not talked Hornets much at all ever, but especially not lately. I suspect that you're with me in like, I kind of like the Hornets direction right now. I kind of think
I did 10 minutes on them on like the news catch up there. And look, they just hired, they have like their new lead exec, and like, that's a big deal. Jeff Peterson. Yeah. So we'll see how he does. I think it's good that you have him in now. He can evaluate the talent that's on the court, and then he goes through the draft, the offseason free agency process. But yeah, Kupchak being the face of the front office through the trade deadline. I'm just saying, like the Hornets, we all killed them for not taking Scoot Henderson, but it's kind of like the only thing I don't understand, and this is a different, maybe when we do our all league mailbag, which if you have questions for teams, specific teams or players, we're going to do an all league mailbag, I think next week. So email us hardwoodknocks@gmail.com or get in our Discord. But the whole, should they get rid of LaMelo and build around Brandon Miller? I just don't understand, where it's like those guys are on the same timeline. What is it like? Why are we making this
I think LaMelo's an imperfect player, but like that is not someone you move off of right now. I think the more talent that's around him, the more excited I am about LaMelo. I'm trying to think. if there's anybody else, you mentioned Kobe Altman. I think that was a good one. Pritchard, you said.
Do you think Danny Ainge / Justin Zanuck deserve like any? They did get John Collins. I like Taylor Hendricks. I like Keontae George.
Keontae George is a good pick.
I was like kind of not disenchanted, but unimpressed by their trade deadline though. So I just don't know. Like,
I think we've covered it between. I think I wouldn't quibble with anybody.
Masai any credit for the Raptors teardown?
No.
Okay.
Took too long. Finally did it, but it took too long.
Where are we headed next, Grant?
Is it my turn to pick? Well, since it's the only one I can see on the sheet right now, let's do Coach of the Year.
I like it. Who is your Coach of the Year? I'm
sure it's the same as you. It's Mark Daigneault of the Thunder, right? Is that who you have?
No. Yes, it's
no. Of course.
No, dude.
So like I think the way in my write-up I did for BR, it's really I think Chris Finch is the other one that I think a lot of people are going to throw out there, and I just think it's fine if you want. I'm going to put Chris Finch too, just because Minnesota is very good, might win the top seed in the West, right there with OKC. But the fact that like these are the two teams that we get to compare, it's just like it's not close for who's like had the harder job, for who has done the more complete job, right? Daigneault's roster is, I think it's the second youngest in the league, but like for all intents and purposes, it's by far the youngest good roster in the league. And the rosiest outlook on the Thunder, which I remember, I think one of my hotter takes was like the Thunder are going to take the small step forward, but the leap's not coming. The leap came. It's a bigger leap than anyone could have expected. He's doing this with mostly young players. I know there's a ton of talent, but like inexperience is a real thing. And he has just overcome that. Like, yeah, SGA kind of makes things pretty workable, but like the Thunder play small, they play fast. They still don't have a ton of bigs. They drive like crazy, like by design, it's drive and kick, drive and kick, drive and kick. They also somehow, despite being really small, this is scheming. This is taking charge. This is using other Jalen Williams effectively. Lowest field goal percentage allowed at the rim. Just like you compare that then with Finch, who has much more veteran talent, whose team's offense is mid-pack, 16th in the league, according to Cleaning the Glass, with like legit offensive talent, right? Like you have Anthony Edwards, you have Karl Anthony Towns, who, whatever you want to say about him, maybe the most prolific, not the best, but prolific stretch big we've seen in terms of like volume and stuff. Like that should just be a skeleton key for your offense if you have a big guy that can shoot like that. The fact that he's a 4, I guess, changes it a little bit. But I would say the turnovers too. Like I'm going to put some of the turnovers on the coach and the scheme and stuff. And the Thunder do not turn the ball over nearly as much as the Wolves do, despite being way younger. So that's my comparison there between those top two candidates.
The only thing I add to Mark Daigneault is also having the gall and license. I'm sure part of that Sam Presti alarm too. Like we're going to bench Josh Giddey during important moments, or we're going to take Lou Dort out of the game and really work the lineup and the matchups. I think that's a great job by him and his coaching staff. With Chris Finch, the reason I didn't pick him is just I look at the Wolves. I'm like, well, how much is this? The Wolves are just healthier. And I actually think you mentioned Karl Anthony Towns. Of all the players, like when you're looking at how creatively they're used or the difference in how they play, it feels like he's actually impacted maybe Karl Anthony Towns the most in a good way. And then it's like you look at everybody else, it's like, okay, Ant's made sort of this natural progress, but is he being used in inventive ways? And is Rudy Gobert is like a little bit more expansive, but like he hasn't been used in super inventive ways.
Yeah, it's way easier to just point to the talent, right? For Finch. You don't have it on the screen right now. Is Finch on your top 3 at all? Or do you have him up there?
Whoa, I scrolled off the screen. Oh yeah, because I was trying to see what we still had left. Sorry. I've Chris Finch is now cringe. He's 5 for me.
Okay.
I guess a part of it's also I was so high on Minnesota heading into the season that it was just sort of like I couldn't quit them. So am I undervaluing him from that perspective? My second guy is Joe Mazzulla in Boston. It's the best coach on the best team. No, I think he became a meme last year because of timeouts and stuff. The fact that he had to take over unplanned mattered, and he was a first-year head coach. This, like, the pieces that they've woven together, like, that's not easy to do. Like, you have Al Horford coming off the bench. You had Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis being inserted into prominent roles. You've gotten enough out of, like, some of your bench players where you look at, things could get iffy for the Celtics after their 6th best player. It's like, no, they're sort of figuring it out. the defense is absolutely monstrous. It still feels like there's offensive shortcomings, but it feels like a bug of the roster rather than a fault. And like, oh, Joe Mazzulla doesn't know how to do this. And the way he's able to futz and fiddle and pull different levers with the lineup combinations, I went with 2 for him. And like, we have to pour one out for the Celtics at some point to say, like, this is like one of the most dominant teams statistically we've seen in some time. So I just feel like and again, this might be another overcompensation. I look at what he's done. He's also one of the most efficient coaches when it comes to out of the timeout plays. So like, that's a big deal to me. And it kind of reinforces that, oh, this is someone who is a tactician. I will go to my number 3, and there might be some recency bias here, but like, Eric Spoelstra's never won the award, and he's not going to win it this year. But like, the Heat just being top 10 in defense, despite, the revolving door of transactions and injuries that they've had. And now they're starting to perk up on offense, even though they're dealing with all these injuries. Even though I'm going to ask you this right now. If the playoffs started today, do you think the Heat even know who's in their starting 5 for sure beyond Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo?
No. And I think that's true. And I think Spoelstra is just the best coach in the league, right? Like, I think that's where we are. So it's kind of the thing where you could just give it to him every year. Like, it used to be that way with Popovich. I think Popovich is not that at that level anymore. I don't think that's any great revelation, but like, Spoelstra is the best coach in the league. So Spoelstra is not my 3rd. He probably should be. I have no argument there. I have Mazzulla 3. Okay. I'm a little bit surprised. I have Thibodeau 4. And it's just like, I put a huge value on a coach that like somehow just gets the guys to always play hard. And like, I think, the Knicks have been at least, they've changed what this roster looks like over the course of the year. But I think this was not an easy team to like structure offensively or defensively, really, because like, everybody knocked them for like, well, they just get offensive rebounds and kick out threes. And it's like, and I feel like Thibodeau was like, yeah, we'll just do that. That'll work. And then when the roster changes again, it's like, yeah, we'll just be a different kind of team. And then when the entire front court's hurt all at the same time, it's like, yeah, we'll just keep winning, I guess. So the as hard as the Knicks play, that's just not every coach gets that from his team. And Tibbs always gets that, and he's gotten it this year. And I think it's been like a challenging job, and he's been highly successful with it. So like, not top 3, but I think he just warrants inclusion there.
Yeah, I only had, and I'll paste them all here. I only had a top 5 ranking. So Thibodeau did make my long list with others. So like, the fact that he's behind Jacques Vaughn, Bickerstaff, Udoka, it wasn't a ranking, but he did make my
fired coach in your 6th spot. That's amazing.
No, I'm sorry. I meant Jamal Mosley. I didn't mean to have Jacques Vaughn there.
You should have left it. That would be amazing.
So yeah, that's a nice little typo, but Jamal Mosley. So my actual 5th guy was Tyronn Lue on the Clippers, and just like the integration of James Harden, that's not easy. And to get James Harden to play differently, also not easy. And just like we've
unprecedented.
Yeah. And then just like there's weirdness where it feels like they're not as good defensively as they should be, but we've also seen moments where they just not so much against the Lakers the other night, but just moments where they ratchet it up and they're just destroying guys. I think that we've seen he's able to mess with lineups in a way where it's, oh, does he know how to use Russell Westbrook properly? But like, the fact that Russell Westbrook has been not irreversibly damaging to this team is a credit to Tyronn Lue, and like getting him to buy into a smaller role, putting him in certain lineups. And then also just like seeing, it feels like he knows when to play Plumlee or a Tice. And it's like, I kind of like the look with Tice more than Plumlee. And maybe you have issues with, the usage of like the backups there, but like, look at the strides that Zubac has made under him over the past few years. I just think his job's not easy because and also just like Paul George having to change the way that he operates. And you could say, well, look, this is what happens when you have your guys more available than not. And it's like, well, the Clippers are really good when they've been not so much recently, but I think his job has been just the James Harden integration. You could say, looking at the value they gave up, yeah, you make that trade all the time. And it's, yeah, but he's such a hard piece to integrate after training camp.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give him his flowers, but your Thibodeau points they're definitely selling it.
No, Lou is the next guy for me right after Thibodeau. You could put him as high as 3 if you wanted to, I think, because for all the reasons you said. So Lou's there. Just a couple other guys I would mention. I have Nurse right after Lou, just because like it can't have been that easy to kind of access a slightly new version of Joel Embiid, which he sort of did, where like getting him the ball in a different place on the floor. And like, yeah, of course it make like his Embiid's touch and like, mid-range jumper and just like unguardability. Like, yeah, that's great. But like, that's such a, like in this era to be like, we're going to get a guy a bunch of shots from the elbow. Like that's our plan. Like we're going to isolate him at the elbow essentially and not run as many pick and rolls as we used to. Like that's risky at the very least. And I don't know how you weigh the fact that like, well, Embiid is going to miss half the season, but I just thought that was good. Udoka and Bickerstaff. So I have the next two of yours, but I just flipped them. I'm trying to think who else. What do you think about Carlisle? Do we just credit Halliburton for the Pacers style, or does Carlisle deserve any credit for that?
I feel like they've made some, this would be a better question for Caitlin Cooper. Like he's made a lot of concessions, it feels like, over the past couple of years there. And so it's like, you kind of look at the Pacers offense and the lineups that he runs where he skews small and he clearly doesn't exert as much control over it from the sidelines. I think he's again, we're talking about like, we're going more than a third of the league deep here. That's also why it feels like Pelicans fans get frustrated with him a lot, but like when you look at this team on paper, you should not be a top 7 defensive team. And guess what? You are. And he has priors that show like this is a guy who knows how to coach defense into his opponents, his teams when it comes to like getting back in transition or running these lineups where it's like, why are they good defensively when like Jonas Valanciunas is on the floor?
And Zion and Ingram. None of those guys are good defenders.
Ingram can be fine at points, but yeah, like and Zion is definitely like the point he was at last year before his injury. It felt like he was turning a corner defensively, and very much this year it doesn't necessarily feel that way. The way CJ McCollum has defended this year as kind of like someone coming out of the corners, and that's been great for the Pels. So just a name to throw on like the long list. But like you look at some of these names, and like let's use Willie Green as an example, or even Rick Carlisle. If their team just shoot up the standings down the stretch run, like they could find themselves in an entirely different order, because coach of the year is always just loaded. I think Daigneault has it on lock, but coach of the year is always sort of where it feels like the margins are thinnest.
Oh, just put Spoelstra on mine too there, just because I can't exclude him.
You didn't even mention him on your own. Okay, do you want him? I'm gonna put him at the bottom and make you feel really
That's
bad.
Fine. I just need him to be there. He's like a coach of the year candidate. He has tenure. Like he's just going to be
win it at some point, right? He's got to win it at some point. We are cutting our awards off there because it is late, and we have Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Sixth Man of the Year. So 3 big ones. We will get to those, and those will come out on Monday. But now it's time for some stat padding. Guess a Player will come back also on Monday, hopefully. So you can send those to us if you have them. Message me on Discord or Grant on Discord. Shout out to Mike H. has a ton of them in the bank for me. I think he's the only one that has any in the bank for me at the moment. I don't know about you, but
let's get to some. Send them to me.
Yeah, let's get to some stat padding, Grant. What do you got for me?
All right, Dan. So just to illustrate how long it's been since we spoke, we hadn't talked. Last time we talked, Victor Wembanyama did not have a 5x5 game. He almost had 2, but that has prompted a little bit of research. Who cares about these stupid round numbers and matching aesthetic 5x5 stuff? Dan, can you name the 2 players who have had a 5x6 game in their careers? I will give you 3 strikes.
They've had a 5x6 game in their careers.
So that, just to be clear, that's the 5 categories: points, rebounds, blocks, assists, steals. Got to have at least 6 of those. It's only happened twice.
Hakeem?
Correct. I'll give you the line. This is ridiculous. It's so stupid. 38 points, 17 rebounds, 12 blocks, 7 steals, 6 assists. This was on March 10th, 87. In a double overtime loss, he lost to the Seattle Sonics. He played 53 minutes.
Okay, David Robinson?
No, I think he's. I think he's got a 10 block game, but he does not have. I'll give you this player. Obviously not active. Well, not obviously. He's not active anymore, but he is someone that like would have been, I think, right around or just before like when you really got into the NBA. So we're talking like early 2000s into like mid 2000s, maybe into the 2010s when he was like in his prime, really short prime too.
Grant Hill?
No, I can give you some teams. The teams will give it away probably.
Let me just use my third strike up here. Mid 2010s, he was in his prime.
I think, basically. I'm trying to think exactly when it was. Also a foreign-born player.
All right.
Career was from 02 to 15.
02 to 15? Who the hell is this guy? So drafted before LeBron. My God, I don't even have like a name to throw out there at this point. All the guys that are coming to mind right now, like, were drafted in the 90s, so I can't even say them.
This guy was a truly unique player. Never really won a major award. He was third in Rookie of the Year in 01-02. Was like, had some top 10 DPOY finishes, a bunch of like top 15 DPOY finishes, won all defensive first team, one second team. This guy's like all over the awards, but like never winning them. He has like some most improved votes, has some 6-man votes in his second year. That's not going to help you. That's just bizarre. I didn't realize all that. He's a very angular person, an angular looking person, I guess. Had some cool hair. I could just give you clues that would give it away really easily, but
you're gonna have to start.
Really good friends with Mikhail Prokhorov, and ended up playing for his team under some strange circumstances on a contract.
Kevin Garnett?
No.
Oh no, cool hair. All right, that's my third strike. Who is it?
It is Andrei Kirilenko. He
had cool hair. Wasn't he just like the flat?
He had like a weird flock of seagulls hair one time for a few games.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And had like weird spiky January 3rd, 2006, and this tells you everything you need to know about the era. In a 90-80 win against the Lakers, 14 points, 9 assists, 8 boards, 7 blocks, 6 steals. He also has like, I can't give you more information. Those are your 5x6s. So pick it up, Wemby. You haven't accomplished anything yet. I'll give you another one. Can you name the 2 players who have had 20-20-20 games? 20 points, 20 rebounds, 20 assists. The first should just be your guess for whenever a ridiculous stat like that is thrown out there.
Magic Johnson?
Even more ridiculous. And actually, the 20 is kind of appropriate for this guy, because he one of his stats that he claimed involved 20,000.
What? Jokic?
No, go way farther back.
Fat Lever? Oscar Robinson?
How is Fat Lever just like just ready to be?
Fat Lever pops up in like every weird statistical search that I ever do. So yeah,
this guy is the guy that pops up when you're like, that's a stupid number. Whoever did that. Like if you were to say someone averaged 50 points a game for a season, or someone,
Wilt?
Yeah, it's Wilt.
Okay.
The other guy did it in 2018-19.
Russ?
Correct.
Okay.
Crazy. Wilt and Russ just joined forever. All right. This one, you have a 50% chance at getting every one of the next questions right. Who has more 5x4 games? So 5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 of all those things.
Can you repeat yourself in case I decide to cut this up? And can you say can you also say which NBA player has
sure? Because sometimes we talk about the defunct USBL players. Dan, who has more 5x4? Which NBA player has more 5x4 games? One more time, everybody. You're just watching the sausage being made. Dan, which NBA player has more 5x4 games? David Robinson or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
David Robinson.
Correct. 13-10. Dan, who has more 5x4 games? Andrei Kirilenko or Josh Smith?
Josh Smith.
It is Josh Smith. Good job by you. Which NBA player has more 5x4 games? Michael Jordan or Ben Wallace?
Ben Wallace.
Yeah, broken streak. It is Michael Jordan, 8-5. I don't know if I said Josh Smith had 10, AK-47 had 9. Does Scottie Pippen or Anthony Davis have more 5x4 games?
Scottie Pippen.
It is Anthony Davis.
Damn.
Last, Dan, which NBA GOAT candidate has more 5x4 games? LeBron or Kobe?
LeBron.
Trick question. Both have 0.
I hate you.
Bums.
I hate you.
All right, I have a. I was like shocked looking down the list. Like never once. You would think LeBron would have done it. 4 steals and 4 blocks. Like how hard is that for him? Dan, last one. This is we're getting away from players now. Dan, there are 6 NBA head coaches that have at least 100 playoff wins. I'm going to give you 3 strikes. Name 4 of them.
Greg Popovich.
Correct. 170.
Eric Spoelstra.
109. Also correct. 2 guys have more than Popovich.
Red Auerbach.
No. Playoffs weren't long enough back in the day. Not enough rounds.
That's a great point. 2 guys. Phil Jackson.
Correct. Leader at 229. Probably not going to see that ever touched.
Man, who am I forgetting? It's not Doc Rivers, at least. We know that. Isn't it Doc Rivers?
He doesn't have more, but he does have 111. So he does get you there. You want to keep, you've achieved 4 with 1 strike. So you can keep going. You could try to sweep the category. There's only 1, 2, 3 more. You're going to get at least 1 more, I think.
Do you think? I'm already out of them.
Coach primarily the Lakers and the Knicks in that order.
Pat Riley. Damn.
Yeah, that's number 2. Actually, there's only 1 more. So, and you're not going to get him. Larry Brown has 100 on the dot. Steve Kerr has 99. Good job. That's all my stat padding for you.
All right, I have 2 long categories for you. Are you ready? They're which players? So you have a 50. Well, one of them's opinion based. The first one's opinion based. Are you ready for it?
I'm so ready I can give an opinion. That's easy.
I have 30 sets of players. So there are 60 players here. Grant, which NBA player would you rather have for the next 5 years? Anthony Edwards or Tyrese Halliburton?
Give me Tyrese Halliburton.
Devin Booker or Jason Tatum?
Tatum.
Scotty Barnes or Cade Cunningham?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think I'd go Scotty Barnes. Cade's coming on, but I like what Barnes has done this year.
Jalen Brunson or Trae Young?
I think I'd take Jalen Brunson.
Luka Doncic or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
I have to say Luka Doncic.
Bam Adebayo or Chet Holmgren?
Chet Holmgren. Easy.
Wow. John Morant or Zion Williamson?
Oh, Dan. Why would you do this? I'm going to take Ja.
Ooh. Brandon Ingram or Jaylen Brown?
Pass.
No. Answer.
I'll take Jaylen Brown.
Jared Allen or Evan Mobley?
I got to take the upside with Mobley. That's how it's bizarre that's hard now to answer that.
Tyrese Maxey or Donovan Mitchell?
Donovan Mitchell.
LaMelo Ball or Darius Garland?
I think I go LaMelo.
Jaime Jaquez Jr. or Brandon Pajemski?
Give me Pods.
I knew it. Nikola Jokic or Victor Wembanyama?
Oh, 5 years?
Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible. Why would you? I'll take Wemby. Why not?
Wow, that's the wrong answer. Alperen Şengün or Karl Anthony Towns?
Şengün.
Herb Jones or Trey Murphy III?
Ooh. Give me Herb. I'll take the 1 premium skill I'm sure I'm getting there.
Anthony Davis or Pascal Siakam?
Davis.
Kyrie Irving or Damian Lillard?
Ooh, 5 years? I think I have. Oh, they're actually Kyrie's like sneaky old, right? What's the difference? 31 to 32. I know I'm just ruining this cut up, but I think I go Kyrie.
I think that's the right answer based on ages. Larry Markkinen or Derek White?
Markkinen.
Paolo Banchero or Jalen Williams?
Jalen Williams. Give me a hard one.
No, that was big Jalen Williams. Wow. Giannis Antetokounmpo or Joel Embiid?
Oh, Giannis. I'm too worried about Embiid's health.
Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller?
I gotta go Scoot. I'm not gonna get scared off by the rookie year. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not jumping ship yet.
De'Aaron Fox or Jamal Murray?
I think I'd probably go Fox, but that's a close one.
Emmanuel Quickley or Austin Reeves?
Oh man, this time last year I would have said Reeves in a heartbeat. I think I still probably go Reeves.
RJ Barrett or Jalen Green?
These are such good ones. You're diabolical. I will take Jalen Green just on the upside possibility.
Mikal Bridges or Franz Wagner?
I think Bridges.
Desmond Bain or Devin Vassell?
Bain.
Bilal Coulibaly or Patrick Williams?
Koulibaly.
Kristaps Porzingis or Domas Sabonis?
I'd take Porzingis.
Wrong answer. Jalen Duren or Derek Lively II?
I think I'd probably go Lively. I'd value the defense. I know I'm getting defense there.
Isaiah Hartenstein or Mitchell Robinson?
Don't I get both? I guess I would take Hartenstein. Is that crazy?
I think that's the right answer. That's the end of that block. Are you ready? This one, there is. I have 25 sets of players, and there is a correct answer.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Which NBA rookie scored more total points during their first regular season? Kevin Durant or LeBron James?
LeBron.
That is correct. He had Kevin Durant beat by about 30 points. Blake Griffin or Allen Iverson?
Iverson.
That is incorrect. Blake Griffin 1845 to Allen Iverson 1787.
Okay.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Michael Jordan?
Kareem. Didn't Kareem win MVP as a rookie?
That is correct, but he only had Jordan beat by like 50 points.
Wow.
How about that? Damian Lillard or Donovan Mitchell?
Mitchell.
That is correct. He had 1,616. Lillard had 1,562. Luka Doncic or Trae Young?
Trae.
Correct. 1549 to 1526. Steph Curry or Anthony Edwards?
Anthony Edwards.
That is incorrect. Steph had 1399. Ant had 1392.
Wow.
7-point difference.
I think I was more sure about that than anyone we've had so far.
That's right. You've always been a Steph hater, though. So.
That's true.
Derrick Rose or Andrew Wiggins?
Wiggins.
That is correct. 1387 to 1361. Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook?
Paul.
That is correct by 2 points. 1258 to 1256. Shaquille O'Neal or David Robinson?
Oh. I'll say the Admiral. David Robinson.
That is correct. He had him by 100 points. 1993 to 1893. Scotty Barnes or Cade Cunningham?
I'll say Cade.
That is incorrect. Scotty Barnes had 1134. Cade had 1114. Ja Morant or Jason Tatum?
Morant.
That is correct. 1193 to 1112. Carmelo Anthony or Tim Duncan?
Duncan.
That is correct by 6 points. 1,731 to Melo's 1,725. Devin Booker or Dwayne Wade?
Booker.
That is correct. 1,048 to 991 for Wade. Dylan Brooks or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
It better be Dylan Brooks because you put him on this question.
That's correct. Dylan Brooks 898, Shai 889. LaMelo Ball or Jamal Murray?
LaMelo.
Incorrect. 811 for Jamal, 803 for Melo. Bradley Beal or Zach LaVine?
Beal.
Correct by 2 points. 780 to 778. DeMar DeRozan or Desmond Bain?
Ooh. Bain.
Incorrect. DeMar DeRozan 662, Bain 625. Kobe Bryant or Jimmy Butler?
Oh man, it's got to be Kobe.
It is correct. 539. It's not even close. Jimmy Butler scored 109 points as a rookie. Because
Butler was not sure good to be in the league at that point for a couple years. Okay.
Yeah, but cool. Kobe's was so low. I wanted to see if I could trick.
That was scary. I was nervous.
Joel Embiid or Scottie Pippen?
I mean, is it a trick question? Are you counting the first year that Embiid actually played?
Yes, that's his rookie season. Come on.
All right. You can never know with you. Scottie Pippen or Joel Embiid? I'll say Embiid.
That is correct. 627 to 625. Giannis Antetokounmpo or Zion Williamson?
Oh man, the game's played. I'll say Zion.
That is correct. 540 to 525. Kawhi Leonard or Tyrese Maxey?
I'll say Kawhi.
Correct. 507 to 488. Bam Adebayo or Domas Sabonis?
I think Bam.
Incorrect by 2 points. Domas had 479. Bam had 477. Nikola Jokic or Dirk Nowitzki?
Ooh, Dirk.
Incorrect, and it's not even close.
What?
Nikola Jokic 796. Dirk 385.
Oh,
Doubled them up basically.
That's rough.
Paul George or Pascal Siakam?
Paul George.
That is correct, and it's not even close. Paul George 476. Siakam 229. Tracy McGrady or Frank Ntilikina?
I'm going to say Frank, and I don't care if I'm wrong.
It is Frank Ntilikina, 463 to 451 for Team Mac. I'm curious. We'll know how many people made it to the end of this podcast by the answer to that question.
I mean, I feel pretty good about my hit rate on those.
I was going to say, you had a very high hit rate. It was actually wildly disappointing.
It's pretty lucky because they were so close that, like, I can't claim to have been like, oh, well, it was definitely this guy.
You can tell. I don't know if our hardcore listeners enjoy this, but you can tell I know what the YouTube Shorts community wants to hear, right? Like, you get it now.
Just a lot of one guy versus another guy. Man, those were tough. The Kobe one was real scary. But yeah, I wish now I could remember, like, Jimmy Butler had, I think did Jimmy Butler win most improved, or is it just like anecdotal that all he could do was play defense and then he turned into a number one option? I forget what that.
He won most improved, but I'll look that up too. But like, I do remember that it was kind of like, oh, Jimmy Butler barely played as a rookie. And he didn't even play that much as a sophomore, I don't think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Jimmy Butler won most improved in 2015.
Third year, probably.
Yeah, so he played his first season, he played a total of 359 minutes, and then he immediately shot up to 2,134 in his second season.
Yeah.
So he didn't actually win it until his fourth season.
Wow.
And that was when he, like, really, because he scored under 1,000 points in each of his first three seasons and then shot up. So like in 2014-15, he averaged 18.6 up from 12. Well, that was per 36, excuse me. He averaged, oh, that might be spot on since he was playing for Tibbs. He averaged 20 points during his most improved campaign, up from 13.1. But he had established himself as like this all-world defender by that point.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about most, like, what is most improved? Like, that's that. Jimmy Butler is the quintessential most improved guy because he became a different player. Like, you know, probably over a couple years. But like,
I think like him, and even I think I had Shea as my most improved last year. But like even Larry Marketing, like where they're just like this completely different guy is like in the spirit of most improved for me. But I do think you do have to wait. Like, oh, if this player is already really good. Mm-hmm. And we're not sure if they're a star, but then they make that leap into mega stardom. That certainly matters too.
Yeah.
Do you want to take us out of here?
Man, if I can remember how, since it's been so long. Everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for, these are all organic stat padding, so we're not going to thank anybody for stat padding. If you don't know, please rate, review, subscribe, follow us on.
Oh, yes. Can I interrupt? If you're still listening, we have been downvoted again, and I don't know why. I haven't written anything controversial. You haven't. Was it our player position rankings? Maybe, but please head to Spotify and Apple and juice the 5-star ratings and reviews. Yeah. I want to see those numbers and ratings shoot up because we're getting voted down. I don't even know. Normally I know what we did. I don't know what we did this time.
It's probably worse if we don't know what it was. Right. Because we're just going to do it again. Most likely.
We might have just done it.
maybe talking about downvotes gets you downvoted. Have you ever thought of that? Nobody likes self-pity in the podcast game. So go rectify that, everybody. Please upvote. Do the opposite of downvoting. Can you upvote on Spotify? I don't even know. Thumbs up.
You can give ratings, but not reviews on Spotify, I don't think. So go give 5-star ratings across both. And I like the number of ratings we have on both those platforms relative to the number of listeners we have. It's not even close. So if you've listened to this podcast,
so your vote counts a lot then, like as a percentage. So get out there. I should probably go do that. I haven't done it.
And by the way, tangentially, we are looking for a new co-host of the Hardwood Knocks podcast, someone who knows how to rate their own show.
I'm the problem that we've known this for a long time.
You've been downvoting us.
Yes, it's been me. It's I don't believe in positive reinforcement. It's all sticks, no carrots for me. So let's do better, both you guys. If merch, YouTube links for all of our stuff, YouTube and podcast description. What else would I forget? I think we should that's enough. We've talked enough.
Join our Discord. Like, let's get more
members. Oh yeah, join our Discord. Get on there. Give us guest of players. Give us cool stats to talk about. Join the conversation. So on and so forth. Apologies to Jared Allen. Shout out Frank Ntilikina.